Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pelvic Pulse podcast. I have a special episode for you today. I'm Brittney, and I'm sitting here with my friend Jordan, who we're going to have a little dialogue today about some really cool topics, more personal topics, blended maybe with a little professional from my perspective. Yeah. So, okay, Jordan, why don't you tell us what's been on your mind lately? And we'll just dive right in.
Yeah, let's dive right in. Hi, my name is Jordan. I professionally am a scientist in the biological sphere, but have been questioning so much how to meld my spiritual self, maybe my religious self. That term is kind of funky, but that with my sexual self. And how does, for me, being raised in a religious household, there's a lot of shame and guilt associated with sexuality, being sexual, and exploring your sexuality. It was either not talked about, or when it was talked about, it was like, you just don't do it. And then when you're married, it's like, okay, now you're married, now you have to do it all the time, or your husband's not going to love you, or that obviously that's not true. But so it's like, how do you, one, get over the shame, but how do you also explore your sexuality, empower yourself sexually, but feel like you're maintaining your spiritual self?
Hot question right out the gate. Super loaded.
I know. There's no right answer, right? I don't know.
No, I don't think there's a right answer.
Yeah.
And I think it all can be, we can parse it out a little bit. Let's kind of simplify first, like, because what does it mean to be spiritual, and what does it mean to even be sexual?
Yeah.
Because that can mean so many different things.
Yeah.
And I guess because I'm like you, I grew up in a religious household, and it's funny, I have to actually listen back to past podcasts, and I don't know if I've ever said I had religious trauma, but definitely had religious conditioning, definitely had some quote unquote rules to follow, or else, right? There was always that like underlining message that something bad could happen.
If you love God, then you won't do this. You won't have sex. You won't think about sex at all. It's like, but I do love God.
Right. And you know what? God made you, and he made you with pleasurable points. Yes. He wants you to experience pleasure. He wants you to experience bliss.
Right.
And that could be in the form of an orgasm. And being in sexual union with someone else. So I guess I can share a little bit more about my story, and I can't remember also if I shared this in my personal, professional, passionate episode, the first episode of this podcast. But like I said, I was raised with religious conditioning, as well as, I think, cultural conditioning. So also similar to you, my mom was raised Buddhist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she's Cambodian.
Yeah.
So Asian culture. Grew up in Cambodia and was the oldest of 5. She has 2 sisters and now 1 living brother, but had 2 brothers. And my grandma raised her, and the rest of the kids all Buddhist. Was very devout, like to the point where when she actually got the kids across the border, like leaving the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and they escaped the communists there, she shaved all their heads in praise to Buddha.
Yeah.
For keeping them safe, keeping them alive. And my grandma had only ever had sex with her husband, who passed away from the communists, and never took on another lover, another partner, single to this day. And
putting her out there?
I know, no, she is. Oh my gosh, she would kill me. That's so funny. No, she's like, I mean, when I ask her about it, actually, because I have, out of curiosity, like just genuine curiosity, like, why haven't you? Like, you didn't want to? And she always just said that she loved her husband, and he was a fantastic husband, and she didn't want to replace him. Not that anyone like would, but yeah, she didn't want to have any other experiences and felt complete.
Satisfied.
Yes. So my mom, growing up with that kind of imagery and that kind of like relationship model, she actually saved herself for marriage. And I think it was I broke out in hives when they found out that I wasn't a virgin anymore. And I mean, it was a funny story kind of now looking back at how they found out. It was like a Planned Parenthood charge on my credit card when I was in college. But I like legit broke out in hives from shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when my mom poked at me about it, she just wanted to know all these questions. Like she had all these questions about it, like who I was doing it with and everything. And I kept that secret. I've never to this day told her who it was, even though he doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's just something I'm like keeping
Yeah,
close
like,
to the chest.
One point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But at least they knew I was like safe. I was trying to take care of myself. And at that point, I didn't know any better about hormonal birth control, but that's a story for another time. And I continued to have sex, but I think underneath it, the people I was choosing at the time weren't after my best interests, I think. And I didn't experience any like pain with it, but definitely there were certain like sexual experiences with some partners in college where I was like, oh, that's not going in me, or like I didn't orgasm the first time,
Yeah.
or the second time, or the third time I had sex. It was like years later, almost a decade later, that I actually had an orgasm.
Makes sense.
And to me, that actually was linked to my shame.
Yeah, 100%. I empathize.
Right. And I think like for a lot of people, if you're a man and you can't ejaculate or you can't get an erection, it's like maybe there's a blood flow issue, likely, but also maybe it's psychological.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of women, it ends up being psychological and not a blood flow issue. So yeah, it was really interesting. And so the partner that I actually ended up having my first orgasm with, I mean, number one, I had to be on something. I was either drunk or high when I smoked at the time. I don't smoke at all anymore, and I don't really drink a lot, like a 1 drink a week kind of gal. But it was interesting that I had to numb myself out to kind of release any extra layers, including the like conscious awareness, like, oh my God, I'm having sex. Am I making myself dirty, unworthy, unvirtuous? Is that a word?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And it was at that point too that my brother actually told me, I remember this so vividly. I was in my car in Encinitas, parked, and I was talking on the phone with him, and he was sharing that he was about to propose to his girlfriend, who's now his wife, who, I mean, I love them both so dearly. And that conversation, not that he meant for it to be like this, he was just honestly sharing where he was at and what he did, you know, think about the partner that I had. He like highlighted some things that I think I knew deep down, like this partner wasn't exactly what I would want for a long term or husband. And I remember feeling that shame and also just questioning, because at that point I was like, this was my thought process. I was like, well, I already know that we can have great sex. I already know that.
Yeah.
So like, what does a relationship look like without it?
Yeah.
Because at that point too, I think I was in a very anxious attachment style, and I, in an unembodied way, unconscious way, really used, like weaponized my sexuality before, and was trying to like lure him in each time, like, you know, tantalizing him and, you know, just manipulative, which isn't fair. And it's not fair to use even sex as a punishment.
No.
Unless it's consensual.
Unless it's fun. Yeah.
So this was a conscious ask. I was like, well, what would it look like if we didn't have sex? Like, can we take a pause on this for a little while? And he was actually really supportive.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. And what happened?
So what happened was I got in my head again And I got anxious about him potentially not loving me, and kind of gave into, quote unquote, gave into having sex again because I was using it.
Yeah.
I don't think he was even doing anything differently looking back. I think I was just so heady about it and so self-conscious of where our relationship really stood. And that was like definitely a time where I was just like texting him all the time, seeing if we could hang out. And if he didn't make plans with me, I was so butthurt.
Yeah.
And yeah, then
you're like flirty, like, you want to hang out with me so that we can have sex.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, come over and check out my new bed. Like, so stupid. Oh man, I laugh at my younger self. No, she just did the best that she could at the time. So interestingly enough though, right? Like after that, I was kind of like still wild child with my sexuality after we broke up. Actually there was a slight pause there where I was going back to church and started dating a guy, and then started thinking, okay, maybe we'll save ourselves for marriage now. But he ended up not being the guy, obviously. And then after that, I was like, okay, all horn dog on someone else. And then I met James summer 2020. And COVID time. We met in pottery class. Yeah, like underground pottery class. And we this is so good. I forget where my head stood at this point in regards to like my spirituality and sexuality, but I think at that point I felt pretty free. I was really confident in my body knowledge. I knew a lot at that point about my menstrual cycle and when I was fertile, when I wasn't fertile, like when I could be safe and when I could be kind of like free. What I liked, what I didn't like, you know, and I could orgasm on my own. So it just felt like less pressure, I think.
Yeah.
And the tension had been building all through the summer until we had like our first date in October, and we had sex kind of like the first night that we were out together. And then we continued to date, and then but even from the first time that we had sex, like we were just together, you know. We did have those conversations, and over time like definitely built into love. I think he told me he loved me for the first time New Year's Eve, so it wasn't like that long, just a few months. Yeah. So I mean, looking back, that's kind of quick, huh?
Yeah. It's good though. Like,
it is good.
You know. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And it felt so right. And then just from so here's where my spirituality also kind of ties in, because to me it's a lot of energetics, and it's a lot of like angels will show you things, your spirit guides will show you things. And yes, I believe in God, and I'll call it all the other things too, but let's just call it spirit guides or angels for now. I talked to an energy reader that summer prior to meeting him, and it was interesting because I asked her about partners, and I was like, well, like, what does he look like? What should I be looking for? Should I be on the apps?
Should be swiping.
Yeah, we just swiping left and right. I mean, I was that summer. And nothing ever turned out, obviously, but it was cool. She actually, one big piece of advice that she gave me that I think anyone could really use if you are single and using the apps is, if you utilize the apps as a catalog and show the universe what it is that you want, don't settle, because you're not hurting anyone's feelings by not swiping on them. They don't know. So I started using it as a catalog, but she told me to look out for certain things. Like, I would meet him through mutual friends, which we did. She said that he would have horse energy, which he does. Like so many, like a couple things I guess I could share with that. Like, one of the first times I went over to his apartment, we were like talking, and I was talking about my teeth, which is so funny because if you don't know my teeth story, go listen to Carrie's episode and go listen to Dr. Sharon's episode about your mouth and jaw and dentistry and stuff. I told him I fractured my teeth, and I was like, I'm self-conscious of them a little bit. And he was like, oh, I'm self-conscious of my teeth. I've got big old horse teeth. I died. And in that moment I was like, oh my God.
Click.
Mm-hmm. And there were a couple other moments, and even like right now, the fact that his shop is on a ranch, just like there are horses all around. So it kind of just
That's so funny.
hangs there. Yeah. I've written down all the other instances to keep track. But yeah, it was just like, okay, universe is showing him to me. He's here. This is who I want to be with. And it was all confirmation.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we were in love helped a lot.
Yeah.
With the sexuality stuff. And it's funny because a lot of stuff, like you asked me off air about like how my family views my work and how to kind of bridge that gap. Like, is it bridged kind of a thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of stuff has changed. Like I've been able to, like with this kind of like embodied wisdom, I guess, and just over time with the experience and then practicing boundaries, practicing asking for what I need, and also just negotiating.
Yeah.
Talking to my parents, they would have never let us sleep in the same bed
at their house.
Yeah. But it was interesting, right? Like over time, obviously James won them over and they love him. My mom calls him son. So does my dad. But it's just interesting because I've been able to tell them, you know, like I can respect your wishes and I won't have sex under your roof.
Yeah. Even though you're in your 30s, but that's okay.
Right. But like I get it. Like, okay, like that doesn't feel good to you. I can absolutely respect that. And I can do that truthfully without feeling like I'm putting myself away. You know what I mean? Because if they let me sleep with him, that's all I really want.
Yeah.
And actually, from something I learned in a recent podcast, that helps your resilience. And yes, it actually gives you more quality sleep when you are co-sleeping.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with this. This is getting completely off topic, but I travel a lot for work and I have a very hard time sleeping in hotels. One, because it's a hotel, but two, because I'm not next to my husband. Because he helps me fall asleep. Like he just having somebody there next to you is just so nice. And the comfort of that. So I can attest.
Yeah.
Even when I'm in my own bed, was traveling this past weekend. I was like up until 2 a.m. just like, okay, I can fall asleep anytime.
It's almost like you need the heat, you need the weight. Like that all feels so different. Yeah. And obviously their energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, it was cool to see my parents even become a little bit more flexible, knowing that I respect their wishes while also getting just genuinely what it is that I want. But kind of coming back to maybe like back to like shame from religious stuff and sexuality. For me, this is a personal thing, and I don't know if it's true for everyone and we can go down a whole rabbit hole chat about feminism and what that really looks like. Because that's had obviously so many different waves. But for me, I feel like my shame was dissolved by love.
By his love or by
his
love
love,
of yourself?
love of myself, me feeling God's presence or like spirit's presence when we are in the act of lovemaking.
Yeah.
And I think that's also another thing. I mean, obviously banging, having sex, fucking, like all of that can be really great and it feels really good. And also having space for the love making that's really just sensual and deep, so erotic, like getting and tapping into your desires. That's just a different flavor than I have ever experienced that I think I can't not think about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love that. I feel like, okay, so you gave me your story, right? And so my story is similar, but a little different in that, yes, my mom was raised Buddhist by a strong sexual woman. My grandmother is like she was a super fierce energy. You know, never not had a red lip on, just like lived in her feminine power, pussy power, if you will. And my mom lived in that too up until she was pregnant with me. She converted to Christianity, and for a litany of reasons, but she then joined the church where they told her, like, you can't have sex, like you outside of marriage. If you do, you're not virtuous. That's like a huge sin. And so that was the first time she associated guilt and shame with sexuality. And for her, it was such a huge blow that when she had me as a young girl, she didn't want me to feel that same shame of um being promiscuous, and then realize, having the shame of promiscuity, if that makes sense. So she, raised me with good intentions, and she was never like not talking to me about sex. Like if I ever asked her about, I remember this really clearly one day when I was like probably 8 or 9, and there was like a 69 symbol on the back of somebody's car, and I knew it was sexual, but I didn't know like what it meant. And so I like asked my mom, like, what is 69? And she like just clearly was like, oh, it's, oral sex, like the man, the woman. She never hid anything from me. She was like always very open, but she also was just like, do not have sex before you're married. Like you could get pregnant, you don't want to ruin your future. It's not in God's will. Like save yourself for the person you're gonna love. Like that it's a gift to give to them.
Ugh.
All yeah. So all of these things, that it's like she had the right intention. She wasn't trying to like shame me or guilt me. She never made sex seem bad. The church did. And as you said, I was very much so conditioned by the church, because of what I didn't mention is that my mom worked for the church for like 10 years of our life. So maybe 5 days a week I was at church. She was at church at full time. She worked for the church full time. So I was at church all the time. So I was not only raised by her, but I was like raised by the church, where it's like, oh, you're not wearing stockings, you're going to hell. That kind of thing. You're wearing makeup, oh, you're a hussy, like just ridiculous
And where
stuff.
was this?
In Los Angeles, California. That's where I was born and raised. And so there's a lot of conditioning. I really like that word. I don't know if it was trauma, but it was definitely conditioning. And so I simply did not have sex. I did a lot of other things. I was very sexual. I did a lot of like, oh, there's boobs in that book that's like about mothers or whatever, and like
I would secretly look at pornos at my family's house.
Totally. Like I was a human being. I was a teenager. I was a young adult. I was super interested in sex. And I think the taboo of it made it even more like enticing.
For sure.
And I've always wanted to be like a sexual minx. I am very nerdy. So it's not in my repertoire, but
yes, it is.
But yeah, so I've always really been intrigued by it. And I've also just been really like confused by why it is such a bad thing. So in the church, so I get, and we kind of talked about this off air a little bit, but I get like why, murder is bad. I get why stealing is bad. I get why, whatever it is, all the 10 commandments, if you will, I get why those are bad, but I never understood like why sexuality was bad. The other things harm you or harm your community or harm your neighbor. But like, what is the harm of sexuality, or what is the harm of pleasure? Obviously there's pleasure where you're harming somebody else for your own pleasure. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like intentional sexuality, making love, like you were saying, a spiritual experience that like where's the con to something like that if done in an intentional way? Has been a question I've always had. So anyways, I did not have sex until I was with my husband. So I was we weren't married at the time, but we were like 3 years into our relationship. So I had multiple long-term relationships before that, like 2-year long relationships before that, where sex was just not in the equation. But like, even looking back, I appreciate that I didn't have sex, because there's a lot of weeding out, right? There's a lot of like dating somebody, and that dating is a loose term because me and my husband have been together since college, but like meeting somebody and then you'd be like, oh yeah, just like I'm a virgin, I won't have sex, and then they never talk to you again. And so there's a good weeding out. Like I'm appreciative of that. And I'm appreciative of the guys who stayed with me for 2 years without us having sex. I have no idea if they were having sex with other people, perhaps they were, but and I'm appreciative of my now husband, who waited to have sex with me for a long time before we actually did. And then and then we moved in together and got married, and the rest is history. But I really bought into it. I really bought into the fact that like I would let God down. I wouldn't have a successful future. Like I wouldn't go far in life if I had sex. And that is just like, I don't understand, looking back as an older adult, it's one of those things where I still am very much so confused by why that is so important. Like, so what if I had had sex beforehand?
Right.
Why God, if we're going to talk about God, if we're going to talk about religion, it's like he loves you for you. Before you were even born, he knew who you were and died on the cross for you before all the sins that everyone's going to commit all the time. So why would we feel shame about anything about who we are? Because he loves us wholly and entirely. So to veer away from the sexual conversation, in general, shame and guilt should just not be a part of the psyche, but it is very much so a part of the psyche, I think, especially for women. So anyways, yeah, it's just a question I've always had. It's something that I'm trying to actively work through with a therapist, with sexual books and guidance and practices and yoni circles and women's circles and all of these things, because once I did get married, sex was hard. Like, having sex in a space that it was allowed was hard because it was so not allowed for so long.
So in what way was it hard? Was it hard to like get in the mood? Was it hard to be naked? Was it hard to actually let him enter you? Like, what was hard?
I don't know. I love being naked. That part is easy, but
hell yeah.
I think just like, you know how you were saying, like, allowing yourself to kind of like let go and be in the zone and like be spiritual and sensual and intentional with your sex. It has taken me, I've the last few years have been a real journey for me sexually, and I think I'm getting to that place if I'm not there already. But before, it was still very much so like I have to do it. It felt out of my control. Like, my sexuality never felt like I was in control of it. So even when I was married, don't get me wrong, I loved having sex with my husband even before we were married, but it was more of the like, well, even if I don't really want to have sex tonight, I should, because otherwise he's going to leave me. Or it was always like, well, now that I'm married, we need to have sex all the time. Or it wasn't that it was hard in that it was always hard. It was just that there were some moments where it felt very much so like I couldn't have sex before, now I need to somehow be turned on all the time. And my husband's sex drive is like through the roof high, and mine at the time was like not so much. So like feeling like having to have sex all the time was hard. Like, how do I turn myself on? Like, forcing myself to get turned on, when I was forcing myself to be turned off for so long.
Right. Okay. So have you ever read Come As You Are?
No, but it's on my list, my Audible list.
Okay. This will break through the chains. So the whole concept in her book, one of the concepts I should say that really spoke to me, because I read that during the beginning parts of mine and James's relationship too, because even though I also was so attracted to him, so in love with him, I wanted to match his sex drive, but also I just didn't have language even for like what the fuck was going on in my brain about it and why I couldn't orgasm every time, which obviously, okay, so 2 notes on that. When we start to get goal oriented, when we start to feel pressure, immediately things turn up.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the book, she talks about like brakes and accelerators. And
I've heard this.
Okay. It's like a dual operating system.
Yeah, let's talk more about it. Let's dive
Yes.
in. Yeah.
Yes. And so I'd say, think about all the breaks in your life and what was happening while you were younger. And I can reflect back on that too. I put on the brakes as well for fear of shame from my parents, for fear of like, obviously not being loved by my parents, because that was higher than like being loved by some other guy.
Yeah.
And also just being welcomed into heaven at one point and not being punished and
silly, but
taken down into hell. So there were all those breaks. Plus, in the moment, right? It's like, well, I have this on my mind. Like, I have this assignment due, because I think at that point it was like I was in grad school, things were really hard
too. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so you just have a lot on your plate and you have a lot of the brakes on. And for I think most women, there's just such a and it doesn't need to be equal all the time, but it's just not fair how much we end up taking on sometimes. And maybe it's just because we're not aware of even what that looks like. And as soon as you do realize how much you're actually handling, it's like, well, can you take some of this and then maybe I'll actually feel like better about it, right? And I'll be able to open myself up and like my mind can let go. And I forget also if I mentioned this on another podcast, but for me, sex and especially like having an orgasm, right,
Mhm.
was a lot like surfing. So
Okay.
if I thought like, okay, I want to go out and surf today, I needed to give myself 3 hours, like a 3 hour window, right? Because you need to get turned on,
Yeah.
you need to have the space to have the orgasm,
Yeah.
and then you need to get cleaned up and shower and do everything and get ready for the day. Like, I mean, I love a good morning session in the water as well as in the bed, but it just like is a lot, especially if I'm trying to start my day at 9:30, have a breakfast, all the things. It's like, do I really need to wake up at 5:30 to have sex? No. But also, yeah, for me, like surfing is difficult sometimes, and catching a wave, catching an orgasm is challenging. And when that becomes the goal and it's not about being present and not about having fun, then it's just the carrot's gone.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, it's just not attainable. So for me, breaks, learning to take the breaks off for myself
Mhm.
and letting James know, hey, can you help me relieve some of this
These
pressure
breaks.
and
Yeah.
tension? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then it's like, okay, well, what's going to accelerate you?
Yeah.
And is that the fact that you are showered? Like some people feel weird about not being quote unquote clean,
Yeah.
or being stinky or being hairy and not being well shaved or groomed or whatever. Maybe it's
I
you
mean, we
like
have
to
a
be,
child too, so there's
well, that's another break.
that's a whole other break. Yeah, but yeah, so I completely agree. I mean, I was also in grad school at the time, which is just a whole nother level of stress. Um, and I think it for me it was the breaks came before in my own pressure on myself of like, okay, we're this is the time we're about to have sex. Okay, get as turned on as you possibly can, and that never works, right? It's like trying to tell yourself like don't think about an elephant because all you're gonna think about is an elephant. So like when you say like get turned on, you're never gonna be turned on, right? Like I don't know. It was just so hard to like just naturally feel ready all the time. There was moments for sure, but it's just I don't know, it just felt so hard. And I think what I needed and what
The
my
dog is snoring, by the way. I don't know if anyone can hear,
but what my husband gave me permission to do, which I'm so grateful for him and his patience over the last we just had celebrated our 7-year wedding anniversary last week. But what he gave me permission to do is take control of my sexuality and like that through a number of different ways that I'm not going to get into on this podcast, but he that allowance for me to say, hey, I can experience my sexuality. I'm going to cry because it's so powerful, but like I can experience my sexuality how I want, really allowed one huge break to be lifted, which was I needed to experience sexuality through the lens of somebody else or through a religion or through like I think I found my spirituality, my connection with God has always been very strong. And I never needed anybody else to tell me like how I feel about my God and my connection with, the higher power, the angels, the guiders, whatever we want to call them. But I think I needed to have that conversation with God and have somebody give me the permission to like question it and like ask him like is this okay, like what is wrong with this, like have these questions for myself and get his answer back to me and so I can feel safe in my own sexuality. And I think I just needed somebody who where my sexuality mattered to them, like my husband, give me the permission to ask those questions and figure out my own connection with God and sexuality for myself. So it's been like the last 2 or 3 years of my sexual journey, but it's been a huge shift. The fact that I'm even talking about sex on the podcast right now, the fact that I just admitted to the world that I had sex with my husband before we were married is like a big freaking deal.
and you know what? I want to honor that. I really do, because
Yeah.
it isn't easy. I think when you grow up the way that we grow up, how do I even say that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Conditioned the way we were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It it's really freaking hard. It can be really hard.
It's really hard. And like I'm just now, so one of the questions I asked you was like, how do you meld your current like public company with your upbringing and with your family? And like when I started therapy a few years ago, specifically for getting over sexual guilt and shame, that was the goal of therapy. She said you need to have a conversation with your mom. and just like talk to her about it, because it's not that my mom, like you said, it's like, yeah, they're not trying to do anything wrong. They're just trying to raise you the best they can. And my mom did an amazing job. And I honestly think it's more the church than my mom. My mom's like the best mom ever, but I'm biased. But I had the conversation with my mom, and I was like moved by how moved she was, because she started crying, and she's like, I never wanted that for you. Like, I never wanted you to have an unhealthy relationship with sex and shame. And like, we had a very long conversation, like, and then a year and a half later, where I had completely moved on from the conversation, she like came to me crying, and she was like, I bought you this book about, like, it's called Sexuality and like how to pleasure yourself. And I was like,
oh, and I have a question for you,
Yeah.
actually, kind of circling back.
Yeah.
Were you masturbating at the time, like having any kind of solo play?
Oh,
No.
absolutely.
Okay. I just want,
But I felt a lot of guilt and shame around it. But since I can remember, I have always like, even like 3 years old, like
it starts
preschool.
young. People don't
I didn't know
realize.
what it was, but I
For sure.
distinctly remember being like in a public, like in preschool, like on the mats, like where it's like nap time, like squeezing my legs together. And like, for sure, like I didn't know what it was. But yeah, that is something I've definitely felt guilt and shame over, but far less guilt and shame than like actual sex. I was like, well, at least I'm not actually having sex. But anyways,
Well, I think that's where, like, so the languaging actually is super important with that. It's like, are you getting caught? Like, caught in the act? Like,
Yeah.
getting caught has like a certain connotation to it, right? And it depends totally on like what the person who witnesses you feels about it and their uncomfortability. Oh my gosh. If you haven't seen Big Mouth, if anyone's like a Big Mouth fan,
I hear it's hilarious.
it's so freaking funny. I mean, I would binge that show again, and it's cartoon, but obviously for adults, and they go through all of these puberty questions and all these sexuality questions from the lens of a like 7th grader boy and all his friends, who include girls and everything like that. And part of one of the character stories is like having or masturbating and having an orgasm in the gym, like for the school sleepover or something like that, in front of everyone, and everyone catches her, and there's like a shame wizard, and it's just so freaking accurate. But oh my goodness, you just like hit a bunch of nails that I wanted to come back to. And kind of going into like how hard it can be for someone who has had a lot of religious conditioning. A lot of people are actually experiencing vaginismus because of it, and pelvic floor tightness.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah. And not even knowing how to release. There are plenty of shows and movies that kind of show you that. But also within the office that I work in.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to kind of touch back on the conversation you had with your mom. Because I think that's such a pivotal point for people.
Oh, it was huge.
You get your conditioning, you get your fundamental beliefs from your parents.
Yeah, whether you want to or not.
And I think something I want like people to remember, because this is what I had to remember, to like, it's not like my parents and we never took a break from talking. Like, we've always had communication, like always open lines of communication. However, did some topics make them uncomfortable? For sure. But I feel like with me talking to my mom, whether it was me bringing it up or her bringing it up, it was just very evident, now that I think about it, that her only thing was about protecting me.
Yeah.
Whether that was, I don't even think it was like from hell. It was just from like
pain,
betrayal.
Yeah. 100%. And like, like I said, like earlier in the conversation, like looking back, I'm grateful for my experience. Like, I'm glad that I saved myself, because it did save me from some terrible scenarios I could have had with men, boys, for sure. So like, I wouldn't go back to change anything about my sexual like practices, like, but I wish I just had a different relationship. Like, I wish there was a different intention behind it. Like, save yourself because you want to, because for whatever reason, other than like because you're afraid that you are going to be unsuccessful, or that God's going to be mad at you or not love you. You know what I mean? Like,
it's so interesting that it was tied to your success.
I know. Because for a long time, until recently, I felt like God's love was transactional. And I think that's taught, right? It's like, if you do this for God, if you pray every day and you read your Bible, then God's going to be happy and he's going to bless you. But that's not true, right? Like, and God's love is unconditional, and it's given to us by grace. And that is oftentimes left out of the conversation. And I think there's a book that has nothing to do with religion, but it helped me see this point of view of God. It's called The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia. I'm gonna blank on her name, but
I can't remember the name.
Yeah,
I haven't even read it, but it's been on my cart.
Oh, it's good. It's good. But there's just something in it that's just like it's not even like, self-love. It's like radical, extreme self-love. And I just got to the point of where I was like, God loves us in this way. Like, he knows everything about us. He's not going to be unhappy. Like, there's some behaviors, of course, that he's not happy with, of course, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't love us. And I think that also shifted when I had my son, where it's like, there's going to be moments where I'm like, that was really frustrating that you did that. And I really didn't like that, but there's no way that I don't love you with all of my freaking being. And I think that just helped illuminate something in me, that it's like, he is such a gracious, she, the universe or whatever is so gracious that even when I fuck up, he's going to use that fuck up for my success in the long run. Like, it's not that it doesn't matter. That's too like blasé, but I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform for God's love. And that is just not what he is asking for. Like, and so that's part of the journey of just self-love helps release shame of all kinds, is what I was kind of saying before.
Totally. And I mean, something interesting actually to differentiate for people, maybe I just finished reading Daring Greatly by Brittney Brown, which
so good.
Oh my God, the end of that too with the parenting manifesto was so good. It's making me look forward to having kids and stuff. Yeah. But the definition that she has, or like the example, let's say, for like shame and guilt, because they're different.
They're very different.
Guilt can be helpful.
Yeah.
And it's not that. So the phrase that she uses is like, I did a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
I did a bad thing.
Versus I am a bad person.
Exactly.
Which is shame.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I feel like it's just recognizing and not that sex is a bad thing.
No.
It's not a bad thing. And I think so we were kind of connecting it, why is sexuality bad? Sexuality isn't bad.
Not bad. That's the key.
It's
right?
not bad.
Yeah.
I don't
an hour and a half to get to the punchline.
You're welcome, you guys.
And good night. No.
Oh my goodness. But it's so funny because so as soon as you feel this self-love and self-appreciation for your own sexuality, what can that look like? There's so many different ways that you can express it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's funny that you were thinking, not funny, but interesting that you thought too, once you were married, you have to have sex to a certain degree and it needs to look a certain way, or else again, there's everything's conditional.
Yeah.
And it's not conditional.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No.
And in the ideal relationship, if you're monogamous, right? That doesn't make an impact. And oh my goodness, my head is going a billion different ways. Different ways. No, it's so good. It's this topic is so rich. But I feel like that's another condition, and that's another belief pattern that people have. I needed to get rid of that same thing. I thought there's something wrong with me because I was so sexual in another long-term relationship back in the day. I thought that I had to have sex at least 4 times a week.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was my number 2. I was like, if you're not having sex at least 4 times a week, then it's not a healthy relationship. You're not a healthy person. And then I was like, there's something wrong with me. My libido's all whacked. I definitely got off of hormonal birth control, which helped. But there were so many other things where I was like, that's why I went to a therapist. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. There was something wrong with me, that I thought that there was something wrong with me. And that I thought there was something wrong with sex. But yeah, I think we need to normalize sexuality in all its forms, whether it's you want to do it 1 time a day or 1 time a month or never. It's all normal.
Right. Normal is a range, and we learned that in grad school.
Okay, I am so impressed by your PhD, by the way. we both have PhDs, but in very different things.
Yeah.
Me and my husband are on this sexual journey together, and we're like, should we go back and get our masters in like human sexuality? Because we are so enthralled by the topic.
I mean, I love you guys, the fact that you guys are doing that or thinking about it like that together. And I feel like, I don't know, I don't think you need to go back and get your master's. You could
probably not.
totally audit some classes. I've got plenty of book recs if you need more.
Please give me.
But yeah, there are a ton of good resources out there on sexuality. And if you are curious, as you are listening here, head over to my book rec link.
Yes.
I'll put it in the show notes for a quick link. But yeah, no, it can look so many different ways. And I guess if I'm just going to be super transparent right now, it's like I'm just in the phase of life where my focus has been shifting because we just adopted a dog.
Yeah.
And she's not, I wouldn't say she's high maintenance, but she's a little needy. And
if anyone could see the scene right now,
they can see the scene. Oh my God. She's curled up behind me and snoring with her throat on the armrest. So, I mean, having a different entity and a different energy in her life, something to take care of, it's a lot more responsibility, which it's kind of in a weird way giving me a flavor for maybe what parenthood can look like. And like you said, children can be breaks. And for me, it's like, I think we're only having sex once or twice a week max.
That's okay.
Maybe every other.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it feels weird to say that because I feel like maybe the perception too, and this is what's so interesting about people sharing on Instagram, right? Like, or just having a really public platform or public business. It's like, well, yeah, you're going to get to know me personally if you work with me because that's just how I operate. And it's funny, I was really thinking about this earlier. It was just interesting to note how my transition from like being even curious about this stuff, like the reason why I got into this was because of my own shit. And I just started rereading Hormonal, and she calls it in the front like me search, and this is why people take classes in college, right, for their own curiosity.
I took human sexuality in college,
and I wish I did. I remember being so like, ooh, I want to take it, but it just like I never had the balls or never had the ovaries to do it. And I wish I would have.
I didn't tell my mom I took it until I graduated, but I did.
She didn't even see your transcript.
No,
damn.
She trusts me.
But yeah, like all the self-interest, like this is why I got into this. And this is why I actually don't mind sharing about it because it's all embodied wisdom. And yeah, I mean, it's a practice to be this vulnerable. It's a practice to be open to sharing. And that can look so different too.
So one other thing, just talking about being vulnerable and sharing and like talking about your normal so other people feel normal. Like right when I started this journey, I was talking to one of my good friends from grad school about it, and she was talking to me about her sexuality, and she's like very open, very sexual. And then I was talking to my other friend from grad school, and we both had kids, and she was like, yeah, I don't want to have sex right now. I have zero desire. And I was like, I felt the same way. Like, and she's like, well, I thought I thought I was weird for feeling this way. And I'm like, no, like we're all normal, we all feel this way. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, it just talking about it, like just sex. I think people think that girls talk about sex a lot. Maybe they do, maybe in certain realms and spheres they do, but I think they talk about it in a different way than like, I do not have the urge to have sex. Like that's not something that I think women bring up a lot because it's like, oh, are you okay? But then you also don't want to be like, I'm so horny all the time. I don't know. So, but yeah, it was just so nice to be able to have that conversation because I don't know how it affected her, but it affected me because I was like, oh, the fact that I can talk to somebody else who has the same exact feeling about sex right now, especially after you have kids, just like adopting a dog. It's a little different, but it's like I just do not have the capacity to like even think about it right now.
Right. So I think that's actually an interesting point, and something I ask just to formulate some maybe different perspective for people is, especially if a woman is postpartum and early stage postpartum, and when I say early stage, I don't just mean the first 6 weeks before your checkup. I mean a year to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in those early stages, and especially if you have back-to-back kids,
Oh,
like
angels.
angels, yeah, your sex drive is not gonna look the same. Your capacity is gonna be different. And what I'd like to offer to people who maybe, uh, are so used to having sex look a certain way and enjoying it with their partner in a certain way, like, you kind of, not that you would get into a rut, but, like, getting into a routine about what it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how pleasurable that is. What if you could redefine sex for yourself and for your partner
Mm-hmm.
and for your relationship? And what if the sex that you're saying no to, or that you're not turned on by, is just, it's not the sex you're, yeah, being offered? So what do you want?
Mm.
What would actually feel good? And if you open up your definition of sex to like something non-penetrative,
Yeah.
there can be sexual energy and tension and eroticism attached to anything, like including a face massage, a scalp massage, a
That foot
back
massage,
scratch,
yeah.
a foot rub.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So many things. I love that. I think um I think so. It was a similar question that I think my husband asked me, which was like, you take control of what you want sexually. Like it doesn't have to look like what society, religion, whatever says it should look like. You tell me, what do you want, or what does it look like to you? Or ask yourself that, like, because that question somebody has maybe not even thought about, like, what do I want? What can I get turned on by? So I just love that. I think that's so great.
Yeah. And I think over time, right? Like you end up expanding your capacity, especially as a mom. It's kind of, it's with the territory of being a parent,
Yeah.
you know? You just, I mean, it's funny. I'm like doing a lot of research on stuff and with my business and like making more money and why people have money blocks, quote unquote. But it was like rephrased differently to like, it's not that you're afraid of money. So let's say like, it's not that you're afraid of, well, I'm not even going to put it like that. It's not that you're afraid of money. It's that you're afraid of the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think in the end, and this is what's so fascinating about sex, is that when you do keep that tension alive, however you're doing it, it does create oxytocin. It does create that bond. It creates that big capacity in your relationship. Like
Mm-hmm.
just love more. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It's so funny that you use the word responsibility when you did, because I was gonna say this and I was like, nah, we talked about it already. But one of the breaks about being a parent or being a dog owner or being a business owner is responsibility, right? Like part of the pleasure of sex or sexuality or whatever that looks like is the ability to play, and responsibility is like the antithesis.
You got it. You got it.
Of play in some scenarios, right? And so being able to like, and Esther Perel talks about this a lot, but like being able to like have the tether of like being able to like play but still be tethered and feel like you can come back, or given the space to like explore, but still come back, I think is really important in like allowing yourself to feel safe enough to explore. Yeah.
I just gave a homework assignment, home play assignment, we'll call it, to one of my clients who hasn't been sexually intimate with her partner for a little while now. And it's something she's wanting to like tread lightly in, right? And I shared with her the 3-minute game. Have you heard of that?
No.
So basically, you play with a partner and you can set a timer for 3 minutes. And in the end, if it's 3 minutes, you're going to play this question for like 3 minutes each. So it ends up being 12 minutes long. So that is like a kind of a short time to experience something like sexual play or intimacy. And I think it's a bite-sized amount of time for most. So the first thing you ask is like, how do you want to touch me? And you say what it is, right? Like, so let's practice.
Okay.
We'll kind of play with it together.
Okay.
So Jordan, how do you want to touch me? And you could
say, I want to touch your shoulder. I want to touch your face. I want to touch your knee.
And then I would sit with that request and I'll say, like, yeah, touching my shoulder's fine, touching my face is fine, but don't touch my knee. This is negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And you can say,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So timer's on, go for 33 minutes, not 30
Mhm.
minutes, go for 3 minutes, and you do those things.
Okay.
And I'm in the practice of receiving.
Mm.
You're in the practice of giving,
Mhm.
which it's kind of all the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we switch it.
Okay.
And then it's me saying, well, how do you want me to touch you?
Mhm.
And then we do
That's
it that way.
Yeah.
But it's like the you to me and the me to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So it's like, how do you want to touch me? How do you want me to touch you?
Yes.
How do I want you to touch me? And
Yeah.
then how
Do you want me to touch
yeah.
Just kidding.
That's good.
It is so much easier to write that part
Yeah,
out, but
I
yes.
get it. I get what you're saying.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then the whole thing, right? You're practicing in this consent, like actually receiving, actually giving
Mhm.
without like the taking energy that sometimes can be
Mhm.
felt in sex, or even like the passivity of receiving and not actually like accepting something.
Yeah.
Like that is energetics. Like you can feel that when you're in a relationship
Yes.
with someone or when you're being intimate with someone. So I think that's really important to identify for people who are maybe struggling with exploring that play and having fun.
Or knowing what they want, like just being
Yeah.
asked, like, what do you want?
Oh my gosh. How many people aren't even asking that?
99%. I don't know. I feel like it's so rare. I think because guys feel like, well, if I ask her what, okay, we're getting into a kind of different territory here, but I feel like guys are like, well, if I ask her what she wants, then she will think I'm not good at sex, or like she'll think I don't know what I'm doing. And but then it's like, no, it's kind of like the opposite. But I feel like they feel like they should come in like as the expert, like the cowboy who knows how to, like, I don't know, not to bring the horse reference back in. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if they feel like it's like a hit to their masculinity or something, to be like, how can I please you? As opposed to them like, well, the girl just wants you to know how to please her. It's like, that's not always true.
Yeah, something I had to come to grips with too for myself is he's not going to know my codes, especially in the first time that you're having sex with someone. Likely that they're not going to be able to quote unquote figure you out
Yeah.
unless you give them some direction. And I think maybe that's a condition that, or a line of thought that maybe men can, redo.
Mhm.
And yeah, it shouldn't be a hit to your masculinity. And if anything, you can be sexy about it. Like you don't have to be like
no look
derpy.
like.
Yeah. Like you don't need to be derpy about it and
Yeah.
like be poking. And if you really need help and really need some guidance, Woman's Anatomy of Arousal is a great place to start. And even if you're a woman listening to this who is with a male partner who might not get your body, there's guidance for you to go through your stuff and tips for them, which, not gonna lie, I've shared those tips with James.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
I would
It's
love it
only
if
to
they
the
shared
expense of
tips
my
with,
pleasure.
yeah, why you would want them to share tips with you, and like you want it to be like this pleasurable experience for both of you guys. So why not?
I'm
Right?
constantly asking him questions. Like, I mean, not in an annoying way,
Yeah.
but just like, how does that feel?
Yeah,
Oh, do you like that?
Yeah.
Do you like that speed? Like, do you want me to go faster, harder?
Sexy.
Yeah, just get your sex voice on. Okay, I got a little too personal here.
And also to like circle it back to what you do for a living, but like I think part of that is knowing knowing what you want, right? And like a lot of that is self-exploration and like really understanding yourself and your body and your anatomy for you, so that you can help guide somebody, because maybe you do want somebody to ask what do you want, but you wouldn't know how to answer it, or like you think you know what you want, or you think like, oh, I want you to go fast and hard because that's what you see in like porn or whatever, but then you're like, I actually don't really like that, so I don't know. I think that and understanding your anatomy for yourself, and like you said, like learning how to make yourself orgasm is just so important, because there's no way you can teach somebody else. Maybe somebody else can teach you, but I don't know.
I mean, I've had partners try to teach me before in the past, like, oh yeah, he told me, this one guy, he was like, oh yeah, I got my past girlfriend to orgasm, like we can get you to orgasm. And it just automatically felt like pressure. And it felt like oh, you're trying to figure me out. And I
Yeah.
was just so beyond like
Yeah.
being there in my body. And yeah, the anatomy piece I think is huge. And again, it comes back to just that radical, not just self-love, but radical responsibility of
Mm,
knowing your body.
yeah.
And if you, maybe even if you did grow up with religious conditioning or like cultural conditioning, shaming, like I don't know how many people I've actually had in here who have looked at themselves in the mirror, like looked at their vulva,
Hmm.
explored their vagina, felt into their pelvic floor. Like no one really does it until something's wrong. And that's fine. But also, if you want to feel more connected, if you want to feel more embodied, if you want to feel more empowered, you want to feel confident in all the things
Yeah.
that we're talking about, take a mirror to your vulva, look at it, take a picture of it. I mean, I guide people through touch,
Hmm.
self-touch, whether we're in person or online, and that's coming up for anyone listening on the nose with when this recording comes out, but it's I think it's crazy important.
Yeah. It, absolutely. Just like for your own self-reflection, for your own self-empowerment, for your own self-love.
Mm-hmm.
How do you love yourself if you don't even know that part of yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Part of for me, like language was really big and masturbation wasn't like cool with me for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really I felt like that was for the boys for some reason in a weird
A little
way.
like crude.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so someone said sex lab. And as scientists, you and I, that just feels like okay, I can
I
deal
can
with
do
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's research.
It feels innocent.
Yeah, it's research.
And the thing about sexuality, most of the time, it can be really innocent.
Yeah. It's not dirty. It's not bad. It's scientific research. It's self research.
Self-exploration.
Yeah.
Me search.
Yeah. Research.
That's actually that would be a cute way to say it. Like, I'm not gonna go masturbate, I'm gonna go me search.
Yeah.
Search for me.
I love that.
Search for God.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so funny, like how God is so tied into sex and how magical, like when you think about all of that, and even sexual activity for play is absolutely fantastic and one thing. And then sex for even like reproduction is such a miracle.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Incredible. Yeah.
let's just conclude with
I know.
like sexuality isn't bad. It is beautiful. It is magical. It's spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So do you have any last questions? Any last thoughts?
No. I mean, yes, of course, but
It's a never ending
it's a
conversation.
never-ending topic.
Come back for season 2.
Yeah, but that was really nice. Thank you for letting me ask you all these questions and hearing your story. And
Well, thank
great.
you. Thank you for being here to really facilitate the discussion and sharing your story. Yours is huge. You've come so, I mean, just to let everyone know too how we met.
It's
Origin
like a
story.
weird like connection that before we even met too.
Yes, because I grew up in LA as well. JPL had something to do with it.
Both of our parents worked there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but we
But
actually
they
met
don't
in
know each
a
other.
they don't know each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we've already checked. We met in a booty yoga class.
Yeah.
Which funnily enough, like that class always connected me to that deep sacral
I have
sexual
never felt
energy.
more sexy than when I'm in that class.
You always
I love
encouraged
that.
me, like just by even like being next to you, being near you, you could feel that
I
ooze, and
love
I
that
felt like
class.
through osmosis, all of us got it. All of us got that juiciness and felt so good. So shout out to Katie Caston for
Thank you.
bringing us together. But yeah, thanks for being here, Jordan.
Thank you so much. I love your podcast, dude.
Thanks.
It's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're doing good work here. Blessing people.
Bless up. Until next time, guys.